Dr. Brendan Halligan, Chairman of Institute of International and European Affairs, Ms. Jill Donoghue, Ambassador Dorr, Professor Keatings, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Dear Gwit, thank you very much for this very warm welcome. I'm extremely honored and overwhelmed by such a warm welcome and to have an opportunity of addressing such a distinguished group of people in Ireland in this very historical chateau. I heard that this is 900 years old. Still, everything looks, it was built yesterday. It's amazing that people were able to build such a sturdy, beautiful, elegant building 900 years ago. What an appropriate place for us to gather this morning as a first part of my official programs and addressing the public here. This castle has served as a stronghold for centuries. Today, standing in this and sitting in this castle, I want to speak about fortifications of some different kind. The foundations we need to build for global peace and well-being. This castle has so much history. Successive generations asserting their claims, ruling for a while, then giving away. Today, I want to talk about different kind of history here. You have 900 years history, but I'd like to speak about different kind of history, not of conquest, but rather the shared narrative we must write in an era of global interdependence. Ladies and gentlemen, every United Nations member state has a moving and proud story to tell. Ireland's is also as moving and as proud as any other countries. But you have faced privation, the likes of which few others have suffered. You have experienced political upheavals and unrest. You have given us literatures of lasting universal resonance. We have, in fact, enriched, I myself, since a young boy, and myself with the wisdom of George Bernard Shaw, James Joyce, and your latter days with the philanthropist Bono, who has been my good friend. George Bernard Shaw, James Joyce, they are all historical people. I have never met them, only through books and wisdom. But with Bono, I have met him several times on my capacity as Secretary General. I regard him as one of my good friends. I hope he will regard me as a friend, too. Your sons and daughters were once more likely than not to live in large numbers to seek their fortunes elsewhere. They created a far-flung diaspora. In recent years, they are staying or returning as Ireland with the grit and savvy and sound investment in itself has moved to the forefront of global achievement. For a relatively small country, Ireland occupies a large profile in the world's awareness. Your quality of life is the envy of many others. Your global engagement inspires admiration of many countries and respect. And as I have seen firsthand, you are a dynamic presence in the United Nations across whole spectrum of our agendas. Global solidarity is part of Ireland's identity. Your history has enabled you to forge close ties with the developing world. When the decolonization movement swelled the ranks of new states, you were among the most active in welcoming them to UN membership. You have been a bridge builder ever since. The world's poorest and most vulnerable countries have long been able to count on your generosity. So have a wide range of United Nations agencies. You have been on the front lines of disaster response. As a country that has known profound hunger, you have helped millions of people to avoid that same fate you had experienced. Last year's cluster munitions conference here in Dublin, at which these inhumane weapons were banned, was just one example of your leadership on disarmament and non-proliferation. Irish personnel continue to serve with distinction throughout the United Nations organization. My distinguished friend, Mary Robinson, whom you know very well, during her years as High Commissioner for Human Rights and in many other capacities, even these days, I have been very closely working together. Now, another distinguished Irish, Patricia O'Brien. She is now first female legal counsel of the United Nations. For the first time in the history of the United Nations in 63 years, I appointed her as my legal counsel. You should be very proud. And she's been providing me an expert eye, both legal and political, to many complex issues of the United Nations. You are a strong proponent of UN reform, helping us to become more efficient, effective, and coherent instrument of service. I thank Ambassador Kavanaugh, your representative in New York, who has been working as one of the co-facilitators who have been dealing with this issue, very complex, difficult issues with a diplomatic skill, and I thank you very much. And in achieving the great prize of peace in Northern Ireland, you have given the world an inspiring example, which I hope many other countries of parties to the conflict would emulate. Over many years, Irish government took risks for peace that today are paying rich dividends. You showed that for a peace process to succeed, the main actors must assume responsibility in addressing the root causes. As you know, at the United Nations, that addressing these underlying causes takes enormous resolve and courage. The successful Irish push for peace is a cause for celebration. It is also a cause for emulation by others. So it is no wonder that the government and people of Ireland work so closely with the United Nations at every stage of our work and of our efforts to save people from the scourge of war. This is one of our most sacred responsibilities. You share our wish to prevent conflict from erupting in the first place through mediation and brokering lasting solutions. You are also doing your part as a leading supporter of the responsibility peacebuilding commission to keep societies from lapsing back into conflicts as they emerge from it. And of course, Ireland is famous throughout the world for its contribution to United Nations peacekeeping operations. Now let me talk about this main theme, your contribution and contribution of the world to the peace through peacekeeping operations. Ladies and gentlemen, every day, more than a half a century, an Irish soldier has been working point for peace under the UN's blue flag, blue helmet. Today, nearly 500 Irish men and women are stationed in the Middle East, and across Africa in support of UN-mandated mission. Your contingent in Lebanon was justifiably renowned for its contribution to stability and peace in that country. Unfortunately, 90 of your citizens have paid ultimate sacrifice in the cause of peace and freedom, in the cause of democracy. I pay tribute to your fallen soldiers, and I express my deepest appreciation to Ireland for its long-standing commitment to these operations and to those being led by the European Union. I know that European Union operations are of great interest to you, and indeed I have much to say on the subject. But let me say just a few words about the broader context of peacekeeping in the 21st century. The United Nations remains at the forefront of international efforts to address international conflict. Thus, demand for UN's services is at its highest ever. Now we have 16 peacekeeping operations having 115,000 peacekeepers around the world. They include 78,000 military, 11,000 police, and more than 23,000 civilians. Some people jokingly say that I command more deployed soldiers than any leaders in the world, except the President of the United States. So I'm Commander-in-Chief of second largest Commander-in-Chief in the world. But let me assure you that I do not seek such a status. My aim, my humble, determined will is that to bring all these, every men and women of peacekeepers go back to their home safe and sound. That's my wish. My wish is that I would like to abolish this Department of Peacekeeping Operations. That may be the ideal goal when we don't need any peacekeeping missions. Let's work for that, and I thank you very much. But to be frank, that is not the world we live in now. It's not the reality. To borrow the words of very famous compatriot William Butler Yeats, I quote, "Peace comes dropping slowly." This is what he said in many of the places where the UN is called to serve. However, despite this, we must rightly show patience and determination in our quest to improve the lives of the most vulnerable peoples. UN peacekeeping mandates are more complex and multidimensional than ever before. We are also the only organization that can deploy comprehensive peace operations integrating military, police, and civilians all around the world. As you know, peacekeeping has experienced serious setbacks. Today we face mounting difficulties in getting enough soldiers, the right equipment, and adequate logistical support and supply. This supply has not kept pace with the demand. That's one of the frustrations of which I feel as a Secretary General. The global economic crisis we are now experiencing worldwide could further limit our ability to respond effectively. And the number of missions struggle to operate amidst stalled peace processes and ongoing violences. These gaps and constraints should concern all of us. They have led us at the United Nations to undertake what we are now calling a new horizon for peacekeeping. This is a new concept which I'm introducing to you, which I have just introduced to the Security Council members. Now, as I said, we have 115,000 soldiers in 16 different missions. It has come almost to the limit of our capacity. There is clearly lack of political will. There is clearly lack of resources we can generate. This has given us rethink and reflect how we have to address these issues. Now we are looking at the possibility how we can make these peacekeeping operations more effective, efficient, with limited resources. Can you believe that during the last 2 years, when the whole United Nations system has not been able to get 18 helicopters, utility helicopters? I understand there are tens of thousands of helicopters around the world, but simply 18 helicopters have not been able to come to Darfur when everybody has been expressing their concern in the situation in Darfur. It was only with Irish helicopters, 2 helicopters, when we changed our mandate from U4 to MINUCART in Chad. Then Irish government has, first of all, agreed to rehat those soldiers from European soldiers to United Nations soldiers with critically important 2 helicopters to make our forces mobile. This is the reality we are now facing. That's why we are now looking at with a new horizon on this issue. We are talking to all stakeholders, the states that authorize and mandate the missions, those that provide the personnel and other key actors, island including. Many of you will be familiar. You must have heard a lot about Brahimi report. And now we are looking at what we can build upon and what we can think otherwise from this Brahimi report, which was submitted and approved 10 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many ingredients for successful peace operations. We have to have a clear mandate, political and material and financial support. Secondly, the institutions that uphold the rule of law, and an active civil society. It's not only the government, it's not only the United Nations or the government concerned. There should be very active participation of civil society, including humanitarian workers, a rejection of violence in favor of negotiation and compromise. The list can be longer still, but a critical factor for success is the capacity of our global organization, United Nations, to work effectively with the regional organizations. When it comes to regional organization, we immediately think of European Union and African Union. That we regard our partnership with regional organization, particularly with the European Union, as crucially important key factors of our operation. That is why we are doing so much to build up the capacity of the African Union, including its AMISOM, African missions in Somalia. We are also partners in Sudan. In the same vein, again, as I said, European Union. Indeed, European Union is one of our most important partners. The European Union offers critical donor support for peace building and early recovery. It has well-developed capacities for crisis management, humanitarian relief, and rapid responses. And of course, the European Union can deploy well-equipped missions as part of it or alongside UN peacekeeping operations. The recent deployment of the European Union's breaching operation in Chad, as I have already mentioned, U4 has been rehatted. But now it's my target to fully deploy mandated 5,200 soldiers by the end of this year. We have now still only 2,500. With this U4 menu card, the beneficiaries have been tens of thousands of these civilians and displaced persons who have received vital protections. In Kosovo, cooperation between United Nations mission in Kosovo, known as UNMIK, and the European Union, known as EULEX, has been exemplary. The reconfiguration of UN mission in Kosovo allowed the EULEX to play a more balanced role. I'm pleased to say that the situation in Kosovo remains stable, although we must maintain a careful watch on developments in the north. Of course, there will always be challenges in the course of demanding peacekeeping operations. This has proved to be the case in Chad and Kosovo and elsewhere. But now, both United Nations and European Union are committed to meeting all these challenges. We are working also together in Somalia, where EU will be providing a protective escorts for UN vessels, delivering a significant support package to AMISOM. We are also partners in Afghanistan. United Nations mission in Afghanistan will be expanding its presence based on security conditions. We welcome the European Union's commitment and support to strengthen its police. Elections will be held in August, and we are working very closely again with the European Union to make this election a very credible and inclusive and legitimate one. The UN and European Union are present together in many other situations where UN peacekeeping might not be the prescriptions, but where international community has on the ground in the maintenance of peace and security. Our experiences have again encompassed activities in Bosnia, Georgia, Indonesia, and elsewhere, and we are ever vigilant for future problems that might require our involvement. These joint activities and engagements serve the cause of peace and uphold the principles of the United Nations. I know how carefully Ireland considers its overseas military deployments. I know as well that the UN mandate is one of the requirements, not just as a matter of policy, but as a matter of law. Let me assure you that Ireland's participation in European Union military and civilian missions is fully compatible with this traditional support of the United Nations. This is not a zero-sum game in which more support for one institution means less for the other. We are in this together. There is no competition between the two. We share values and objectives and are on a welcome path of ever closer cooperation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this kind of solidarity is more important than ever today. These are times of trial. We are living through an era like no other. There are multiple crises: food crisis, fuel crisis, flu crisis, and financial crisis. Each is a crisis that we have not seen for many years, even generations. But this time, they are hitting the world all at once. We have never seen any era where we have been hit by all these multiple crises at one time. And they are being compounded by the deeper challenges that predate these crises. This climate change, it has been there since long, and weapons proliferation and security, this bottom billion, poverty issues. Thus, Ireland's engagement will be critical as we move ahead. You also have been hit hard by economic crisis, but I'm certain, on the basis of all that I have heard, that Ireland will not turn its back on globalization. Your society and your economy have underlying and sustainable assets which may remain the envy of many countries in the world. You are taking steps to allow you to be well prepared to join and indeed to contribute to a global upturn when it materializes. In that regard, I'm gratified that your country, your government is committed to continue to make this 0.7% of your GNP as for official development assistance. I understand that your government is committed to hit that target even 3 years ahead of time. As your country continues to evolve internally, I'm confident that you will continue to keep the United Nations at the center of your foreign policy. This is what I'm going to discuss with your Prime Minister and Foreign Minister and Defense Minister and senators and representatives of the Parliament. You are an integral part of our mission to build a better world for all. Stronger United Nations for better world. Ireland's Nobel laureate, Seamus Heaney, captured that mission well when he wrote that we are striving for the day when, I quote, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme, end of quote. Thank you very much for your, first of all what you have been doing for the United Nations, and your strong leadership and commitment are well respected and appreciated by the international community, and I count on continuing support and cooperation, and your commitment means a lot to many people who really expect to be served by the United Nations and to be served by you. And I wish you all the best to you. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.